Hello, everybody. Welcome back to DM Writer's Room. We're back and ready for some more action because today we've got something we haven't done in a little while. I think it's been like 5 or 6 months since we've done this exercise. But thank you for joining us. The DM Writer's Room is a space where we try to demystify the DMing process. We create monsters, we do campaign prep, we do adventure creation and planning, things like that. That's what we cover in this one. Today, we're looking at creating brand new monsters from scratch, essentially. Ethan, if you want to take it away with the actual challenge of today's stream, you can.
Sure thing. So we're going to be making, first of all, sort of getting the classification type style of monster, and then sort of trying to create 3 distinct levels of that monster, right? The lower CR, a mid-tier CR, and a higher CR. Now, because of the way that sort of D&D functions, right, we need to encounter them pretty tight. So the next choice we need to make, I shouldn't say next, I should say the first major choice we need to make is which tier of play we want to sort of be interacting with, right? Because those 3 CRs aren't going to be CR 1, 10, and 20. That's not a helpful monster. You're never going to run into that last one. So it's better to sort of crop a little closer, get an idea for sort of the range of challenge rating that we want to work with, right? So Dungeons & Dragons is sorted into 4 tiers of play, I think. Right? Is it 4 or 5?
I thought it was 3, but it could be 4.
I don't think it's... I know it's not
4.
3, because it's Unknown, Heroes of the Realm, Heroes of the Continent, Heroes of the World. So it's at least 4. This might be worth quickly pulling up. Unfortunately, I cannot, as
4.
I'm hosting.
It is local heroes, Heroes of the Realm, Masters of the Realm, Masters of the World. 4 tiers.
So we've got 4 tiers to sort of choose from here. We've got the, levels, I think it's literally like 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 through 15, and 16 through 20 to sort of work with. So where on that scale do we want to land? The amount of work we have to do to create the monster increases exponentially as we move on. A tier 4 monster is a real powerhouse that needs to survive multiple rounds of combat against multiple combatants without dying.
With access to things like power word kill, wish on occasion.
So, I think tier 4 is a bad idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's cross that off. So we have tier 1, low level play, tier 2, mid-level play, tier 3, where most campaigns end, high-level play, right? Tier 4 is like, Vecna's got 3 dragons, and they're all best friends. Like, it's really high-level stuff. Do we feel like, what's our first inclinations? I'll say, I think tier 2 would be kind of fun, right? Everybody gets through those first few levels. I think it'd be fun to sort of cater to that in-between space. Spencer, your thoughts?
I was leaning towards tier 3, but I would accept tier 2. I will veto a tier 1. We've been in the tier 1 space for our last 2 adventure publications, so I think it makes sense to branch out.
Yeah, absolutely. Tier 1 is, to be perfectly frank, I mean, a little peek behind the curtain for our audience. Tier 1's just the easiest tier to build for. Tier 1, everything needs a couple of abilities, needs a couple of points of that good old HP, but you don't really need to worry about it too much. For the most part, those abilities are pretty simple. So we can cross tier 1 off the list. Michael, you got a preference? So we're talking about 6, so we're either talking about levels like 6 through 10 for the characters that would be fighting this monster. So everybody's got their subclass, everybody's got that first good ability score increase, but we haven't really moved into the real danger zone. Tier 3, levels 10 through 15, this is, rogues have reliable talent, paladins start dishing out crazy damage, right? It's sort of the big scaling up of abilities. You got any preference between those two?
So, I'll say I was thinking that we were making a monster and catering to each, like making something for each tier. So that's what I thought we were doing. So
That's your confusion.
Yes. So if we're just doing 1, I think I would do a tier 3.
Sure.
I do think it would be fun, just because tier 1 is easy. I think
you were correct. I don't want you to get misguided here. So we are going to make 3 different versions of this monster at 3 different challenge ratings. We're deciding what level range of player.
It's like 5, 6, and 7 first monster levels 5, 6, and 7 first, second, and third, instead of level 1 adventurers encounter this one, level 5 adventurers, and level 15 adventurers. So it's like a 5-level spread instead of a 20-level spread.
All right. I gotcha. Cool.
But so you
think
do
tier
still
3?
like that tier 3, okay?
I do, yes.
I accept my veto with grace. All right. So, our first option was 1 through 5. Our second option was 6 through 10. Our third option was 11 through 15. Our final option was 16 through 20. We're going with 11 to 15 level PCs that are going to be fighting these bad boys. So that's going to be pretty vicious. That means these monsters are going to be pretty great, right? So that's the kind of level range that we're dealing with here. If I need to check some math quick to see where that puts us CR wise. While I'm doing that, let's start going around and talking about the little plot hook. So for those of you who haven't watched before, we tend to, pretty much regardless of stream topic, we tend to come with some inspiration, come with an idea, come with a prompt. So just to really get us sort of started, because when you are world building at home, most of the time you're going to have a prompt. You're going to be like, it has to do with dragons. You know, you're going to have something to work from. And so, you know, it's reasonable to sort of go in with that. What, while I pull this up, what were you guys sort of thinking about?
Michael, you want to go first?
Yeah. So the baseline thought that I have for mine is a porcelain puppet, something that isn't.
Oof.
Yeah, it's something that in thought could be a little scary, could be a little bit glass cannony.
Okay.
Porcelain cannony.
Yeah, exactly. And also kind of that what's it called? That uncanny valley sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, super
That's
creepy.
Mine is similar. Mine, the thrust of it is warforged monsters. Some mechanical monster creatures, maybe a hive mind boss.
That's
fun. down the way. And I do think a porcelain puppet kind of fits into that theming too.
It does. It really does. Okay. And I'll say mine while I wait for this last little bit of stuff to load over here. I was thinking of a sort of warlock who has been overtaken by their patron. I know, so deathlocks already exist, which is a warlock who dies and their patron brings them back as a servant. I'm thinking a warlock who got too lost in the sauce, who delved a little too deep, sort of what a Nothic is to a wizard. This would be to a warlock. They have been kind of absorbed by their patron somewhat. That was my sort of guesstimate there.
That's pretty fun.
Pretty strong, I gotta say. Pretty strong overall. Let me get our little range going here. 11 through 15. Okay. We're building assuming that they have a normal size party, right?
Yeah. No reason not to.
Okay.
And do we want to roll or do we want to vote? Typically, we have a roll for which idea we're going to follow through with.
Very true, very true. Yeah, so I think that, well, first of all, is there any that we want to cut? If the two of you, not like mine, I'll say I didn't hear any that I am completely disinterested in. I think these all sound really good. At this very high CR, I am curious what a sort of roided out porcelain puppet looks like that's gonna just like go to toe to toe like that. I'm a little interested in sort of how that shapes. Not in any sort of negative way. I just really think that's kind of interesting. Sorry, I'm also trying to do my math over here while we're talking. What were you thinking? Did you want to roll? Did you want to go at this random?
Yeah.
Did you want to try to smash these three ideas? Two of them, I will say, if we want to just pick, your two ideas fit together. As much as I love my idea, I write, for those of you who don't know at home, I write the monsters for our published adventures. I'll just make a fucked up warlock and put it in one of our adventures. So if you guys wanted to hybridize those two ideas, no beef for me. Or we could roll.
I'd be fine hybridizing. Michael, what do you think?
Sure. I'm happy. I love all the ideas.
Now let me hit you with a hybridize of all three, and that is a child sold soul to some eldritch horror. Obviously, got too deep into that madness pretty quick, and had created the porcelain doll, who became sort of a golem-esque creature that would tail around and keep things safe, but as her mind was lost, so too was the porcelain golem. And that would be the thing. It's a construct making, yeah. But yeah, I'd be fine just merging me and Michael's, if nothing else.
Okay, all right. I think adding the warlock turns this into a full adventure, and I think that I'm going to respectfully bow out, do my warlock another time, and I like this sort of porcelain warforged clockwork thing that we've got going on. I think is exciting. I want to embrace the fact that we have you guys have sort of naturally linked into something like that. I'm trying to compare. So what I'm doing right now, for those of you at home, I'm taking two different options for encounter building. I'm taking the one in the DM's guide, which I am not as fond of, and I'm taking the one from a product I'm a huge fan of, MCDM's Flea Mortals, comparing the two numbers, seeing how close they are to each other. And that just helps me get an idea of sort of what we're dealing with as far as... Yeah, exactly. As far as what kind of level of CR specifically, of individual creature we are sort of working with here.
And that leads to a pretty good tip, which is the more time you spend playing D&D and DMing D&D, the more easily you'll be able to just lock on to what makes a monster acceptable at whatever level you're playing at. When you first start out, you're going to have no idea what level, what CR even means, let alone how to format it and make it make sense. But after you've played 10 level 3 characters and you've had hundreds of encounters at that level, you're going to know, oh, typically they have like this many hit points. This is kind of what the AC is like. These are the abilities they have. And it gets pretty snappy to see that and move forward. And then altering other monster stat blocks to be lower or higher CR is pretty easy after you get that understanding. Can be disconcerting at first when you don't have an idea. That's why you should just stick with what's published when you're a new DM. But after you get the experience, it's real quick to be like, oh yeah, I'll just grab this ability and this ability, give it this much HP and this AC, and it should be fine. And let it rip. It really becomes second nature at a certain point.
Which I think is definitely really valuable to sort of keep bearing in mind, right? You always have the freedom to come up with your own stuff and to find those moments where you can sort of ad-lib something that is more interesting maybe than what would happen if you were trying sort of fiendishly to find something really prescriptive that the book says, good job, you found the right monster,
Yeah.
And also something that you end up eventually being able to do that people call fudging, and that I don't think is fudging, is knowing that like a monster is exciting and being like, but I am going to have to take the damage down a little bit. It's not the same as fudging because it is consistent, right? You say, I really want them to fight this monster. This monster's too strong. It's supposed to do 5d6 damage. I'm just going to have it do 3d6, and I'm going to bring its AC and its HP down by, 1/5-ish. That's fine. You just made a new monster, right? There's no meaningful difference. You've brought down the only 3 things that matter as far as Wizards of the Coast's monsters design is concerned, which is AC, HP, and damage per round. As you move into sort of the larger scope of monsters made by other companies, you have to start thinking about things like, what's their role on the battlefield? Are they a controller? Are they a striker? Like, what are they doing in combat? But as far as adjusting, like, actual D&D content that Wizards puts out, it's pretty basic math for them. They really don't
Yeah.
sort of stretch out into a lot of those like interacting abilities in a way that some other things do. So it's really easy when you're working with like published stuff from them. Michael, what were you about to say?
Yeah, good.
I was just saying, if you are worried about people saying it's fudging, you just give a lore reason to why it's hating a little less. Give a lore reason why it's not as healthy as it should be.
Oh yeah.
It lost its arm in a previous fight. It just got out of the fight with something. It's dancing already.
Yeah, describe it
it's-
wounded. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Oh, I did it with in our Theros actual play. Please tune in and watch.
Watch that.
They had to fight Pelucranos, the world-eating Hydra. I just made that son of a bitch young. I got rid of several heads, and it was like, yeah, it's going to be a lot easier to kill than actual Pelucranos because it's a child still. It's an adolescent. Also, this is a note about fudging in general. I think that it's not as bad as most people make it out to be, depending on your table. I think that it diverges in two paths, where there's one camp of thought versus another. The one is Dungeons and Dragons is a strategy game with rules that you apply to every situation. You follow through and you follow those rules to then complete an objective, versus D&D is a storytelling apparatus with prescribed rules. D&D is a storytelling apparatus. You get to fudge. It doesn't matter. You're not winning or losing. You can't win D&D. That's that camp. D&D as a strategy war game, you can't fudge because that defeats the purpose. So the conflict that you see online a lot are those two camps interacting with each other and just not understanding the other side at all. Because to many people, fudging doesn't matter, because if it's helping the story out in the long run, they're going to enjoy that. But to another table, that is a heresy. So it depends on the table you're playing at.
I personally think that there's only one kind of player who thinks that they really strongly dislike DMs fudging, and it is players who don't know how often DMs have to fudge. That's it.
Yeah.
Run 10 games. You're going to figure it out really quick.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I've run games before. This is before our streams and stuff. When Spencer and I were in college, I ran a lot of games. I used to roll in front of the table a lot. We had a lot of run. We ran away from a lot of encounters in those early days.
Yeah.
You guys had to go, and turn around and
Alrighty.
leave the village to burn more than a few
Yep.
times. Because if you stop, sort of adjusting again, if there wasn't this like overly complicated equation at the center of encounter creation, then I would say maybe fudging was kind of, if you're fudging in like Monster of the Week, what's the point? Like, there's nothing to be gained. There's no math that you could have messed up. In D&D, it's really easy as a GM to just be adding monsters and not do the math quite right, and then like quickly realize that you've done a bad job, like that you've made a really unfair encounter, and you kind of have to course correct. It's why I say, if you're new to DMing, if your table is new to playing, we love D&D. We write for D&D, buy our products, go buy Lich's Dollhouse. I don't play D&D first. D&D is so math intensive. It's so hard. You need a map. You need to spend $300 on books. Start with something where you can, Monster of the Week, you pick up the book for $40, $50, you play it through with all your friends, you're good to go, right? You're up and you're running. Then move into things where you have to do some calculations. Unbelievably, I finally have my numbers here. So,
Nice.
pretty similar ranges. According to the Flea Mortal School of Thought, we have per encounter DC 22.5 to 32.5 CR to work with. 22.5 CR for that level 11 party, 32.5 for that level 15 party. That's to make an average encounter, so we can kick that up and sort of enter into hard encounter pretty easily, right?
Mhm.
That leaves us with a maximum CR of between 16 and 22, right? So that's the highest CR monster we would ever encounter in that range. And then if we wanted to make a solo monster, it would be somewhere between CR 13 and 19. For those of you at home, there's just a table in Flea Mortals that's very easy to use. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, for this level range, it is 1,600 to 2,400 experience points of monster per character, giving us a low range of 8,000 to 12,000 for a level 11 party, and 14,000 to 21,000 for a high-level party. To turn that into usable information, that means our low-level encounters will all be between CR 4 and 10, right? Because you never want to fight a monster by itself. So CR 4 through 10, we could go up to like 12. That just means we have to be really careful with the rest of that combat. And the high-level end is CR 6 through 13.
Yeah. In this exercise specifically, though, we aren't even making encounters. We're just building 3 individual monsters that fit within the parameters.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just helpful to think about how that monster will fit into an encounter, right?
Yeah.
What position?
You're never going to encounter the porcelain doll alone.
Yeah.
The porcelain doll will get destroyed. I'm going to be so honest. The way D&D's laid out, you're never going to encounter anything alone. Why would you?
Number one piece
Unless it has legendary actions, resistances, and layer actions, don't do it.
Yeah, number one GMing advice, just don't. It's not worth it. You're going to give yourself a headache trying to make it work, and it's going to die in 2 rounds, or it's going to TPK your party in 2 rounds. That'll be the only choices you have. So, now that all of that very confusing math is done, and we are a full 30 minutes into stream, it's time to start thinking about this actual Warforged sort of porcelain creature. I think that's a really cool place to start from. So, first things first, we want to make sort of 3 different tiers of this creature. One that is hanging around this, like, you know, CR 4 to 5-ish. The top, very tippy top of that pyramid, something that's cooking like CR 12 to 14, like real high, and then we can just split the difference. We want something in that sort of CR 7 to 9 range.
So looking at SRD monsters, CR 5, we're cooking with stuff like the Night Hag, a giant shark, flesh golem. CR 8, we've got Chain Devil, Tyrannosaurus Rex, young dragons. And then what was it, CR 13, 14?
12 to
15?
14.
12 to 14. 13 is adult white dragon, a Rakshasa, vampire, storm giant. So pretty wide swing for this tier. This tier is pretty impressive. The power scaling you deal with from beginning to end.
But it's a nice split, right? Like, I see the logic. We've got an adult dragon, we've got a young dragon, and we've got these like lower level like hags and stuff, right? So it's pretty clear
things that'll fuck up a village.
Yeah.
But not things that are gonna really go for a city or a kingdom.
Okay. And I feel pretty good about that. All right, so we've got this Warforged porcelain concept. We like that it's creepy. We like that it's mechanical. So lore-wise is kind of where we need to get started, right? We're going to have to kind of fight out this mechanics versus lore sort of thing as we go. Mechanically, we need to sort of divvy that up between the 3 monsters. So first, let's start with these 3 creatures are like inextricably connected. So where do they come from? Where are we getting these, like, porcelain clockwork things? Are they the creation of a mad wizard on a high mountain? Are they the result of an artificer gone wrong? Do we have kind of a, like, I have no mouth, but I must scream? Is this AM? Is this, artificial master computer or whatever? Where are we?
If I could, I think I don't know if there's any god that fits the description, but are there any like child gods?
I can't stress enough. we got to come up with this stuff whole cloth.
We can't
So
use it.
a good thing. So then the logic is you would like it to stem from a divine entity, right? We shouldn't look for a trademarked god to rope ourselves to.
Exactly. Yeah. First thought, it's the child god's playthings.
Yeah, making its own creator race, essentially. My first thought was to push on the fear of AI and that break point where you create a robot, that robot creates more robots, those robots have intelligence, and then it explodes out to, infinite levels of that. That was my inclination, was the explosion of robots through creation, other robots creating them.
Yes.
Warforged on Warforged on Warforged.
Again, I don't. We at some point will get to the point where I can play clips quickly, but I'm imagining there's a clip from the YouTube video version of that thing that I just referenced. I have no mouth, but I'm a scream. Where it's like, not just that, but cognito ergo sum. Like this robot that awakens to its true self and decides that it hates humanity. So we can definitely sort of split the difference here a little bit, right? We've got this idea of this like powerful being, maybe it's divine or his spirit.
Yeah, like an artificer god. I think that's fun.
And this side concept of this sort of fear of the artificially intelligent, this fear of the thing that begats itself. So this could be the sort of myopic creation of sort of a semi-divine being. I'm picturing to reference a sort of TM character. Garl Glittergold is the like god of the gnomes and creates many things and trapped the god of the kobolds in a maze forever.
Mm.
So if we sort of put this in a ancient Greek style divinity, right, where these gods are fallible, they make mistakes, it makes sense for us to have this like hyper intelligent deity make an error and accidentally create the sort of progenitor, which is our high CR monster, and then we can
Progenitor's
sort of
a great
filter from there. What's up?
I think it's kind of build off what Spencer was doing. It could be fun. It's almost like the reverse of the progenitor. I like the artificer makes the baseline guys, and then the lower tiers. And then lower tiers kind of try and fight against their creator.
They make a Constructo bot, and the Constructo bot builds something even greater than the Artificer first could create.
To fight their god.
So our progenitor is our weakest
Yeah, that's
creation.
hilarious.
Okay. I love it. I think we can keep moving in that direction. So we have this being, this creation that was made by a flawed divinity. So we aren't talking about like hyper intelligent, perfect, omnipotent deity or spirit. We're talking about something a little bit more material, something able to make a mistake. Do we want to name that, or do we want to say a god of technology, right? Because a lot of monster manuals will use language like that so that you can just sort of slide that data card into your world. Did we have a really strong idea for that, or did we want to just wave towards tech god or god of artificing? Let's not lock ourselves in the future, right? We have gears and ceramics, so we don't need to have it be sci-fi. This god of artificery and creation of magic items. Do we name them? Spencer, what were you about to say?
I think that it might be good for us to picture this in Prospect, because that fits with that we can make up whatever we want. It's our own IP. And fallible gods are a big thing in Prospect.
Yes, it is.
So it all fits pretty well into that universe.
First name that comes to mind, Telionox.
Helionox.
So, my
Helionox, the creator.
My follow-up question then, thankfully, working with a certain degree of system mastery of Prospect, I didn't need to look this up. So the god of technology of Prospect is Rhodes. Rhodes, Rhodes, the god of technology. That's our most direct person. Rhodes is a very important figure in the world, so this blunder would be rather severe for Rhodes to have made, right? We have the name Telionox, which I love, no beef there. I'm wondering quickly then, is Teleonox... So I've got a little like array of options here. 1, Teleonox is a distinct being from Rhodes that just so happens to be in a similar field of divinity.
In a domain.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Option 2, Teleonox is an angel, a celestial, a servant of Rhodes who made this thing and messed it up. Option 3, Teleonox is one of our higher CR, right? I don't want to throw the name away, so I think our last option is Teleonox is the result of this. Our highest CR creature is Teleonox. What would it be? It would be Teleonox, like magnum opus of the progenitor, right? Is what it would be called. The greatest creation of these creations. The
A good old-fashioned Pinocchio.
Now wait a minute, because it's a very biblical term, but Teleonox, the begotten god.
Pretty brutal.
Hitting pretty good.
Brutal
so,
name.
Is there anywhere in there that we think we want to be, right? So in the world of Prospect, attaching these things' creation to Rhodes is evocative, because that world is about consequences and about how people don't think their actions through. Attaching it to his sort of sub-deity gives us a little bit more wiggle room to have this have
Some
gone
play.
real bad, right? Or we can sort of totally divert and do something else. What are your thoughts?
My first thought is to give it to... Well, this is not my first thought. This is the thought that I've settled on in the last 3 minutes.
There we go.
Is, I think, give it to Rhodes. Rhodes created the progenitors. Rhodes is the god of technology. That's progress. That's moving forward. Rhodes probably doesn't give a fuck if his creations created more creations who created more creations who are going to take over the world. As far as Rhodes would be concerned, hell yeah, brother.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
We do have in lore, Rhodes' goal is to ascend. He is a lower god, and he wants to join the high 3. He wants to find a way to bridge that gap at any cost. So these could even have been one of those efforts, right? The progenitor gods each made some of the world, right? The god of nature created life. The god of nature created like the soil and the creatures to a certain extent, sort of like flora and fauna. The god of life and death, Respis, gave beings to the world, gave mindful creatures,
The soul.
and then ironically, Arcus gave monstrosities. Essentially, he gave those beings that are alive only because magic exists. So we do have sort of a constellation. So it makes perfect thematic sense for Rhodes to be like, I just have to make something. Like I have to create a race. I have to
that
create
which was
a
never
self.
alive, and I'm there.
Yeah. If it's real well.
Yeah.
So Rhodes, the god of technology, creates a thing. Progenitor's too long. I like that. So what do we call these little guys? This
Progeny?
first instinct. Are they the progeny? That might be what we call this
The whole
classification of monster.
Ooh, they're progenies. That's
They're
pretty sick.
The progeny.
Yeah, that's the whole. It would have to be like, what was it? Mark 1, something.
Mark. They're called Mark. That's a Mark.
So if they're called the progeny, they were created by Rhodes, the god of technology. And you could do this at home with whatever setting you're in. Grab a god, right? Throw them in, you're good to go. So Rhodes, the god of technology, creates the progeny. The first branch are these limited, clockworky creatures that exist to glorify Rhodes and to move in that direction, right? They're this small building block that Rhodes believes puts him on par with the other gods. Trying to steer away from being too comedic, right? Mark,
Yeah, it can't be Mark.
sort of doing that like V1, V2 thing is fun, but I'm afraid will sort of take us down a path
Okay.
that at the end will be like, we made androids. We've got those in D&D in a couple of places that we can sort of lift them out of. So,
How about votaries?
I don't know what that word means.
It means like devout worshiper. A devout or zealous worshiper, a staunch believer or advocate, a sworn adherent.
So we've got, okay, so we go from a votary is the first thing, and then the votaries create something that can think for itself, something that is not tied to roads. The votary create a thing.
The zealot.
They create the zealots, right? Oh, see, okay, so this is going to be hard to describe in the book, but I'm getting the picture of this, right? So Rhodes creates these things. He names them the votary because they are his subjects. The votary don't believe in Rhodes. They don't believe in him. And so they want to make a god to be votaries to. And so they make the zealots. And Rhodes is like, look, proof of my brilliance. These are more adherent. The zealots don't believe in Rhodes, and so the zealots make a god to be a zealot to, and that is Telionox. That is the final archon of their belief. They create this alternate, false, manufactured divinity in the form of Telionox. So the votaries and the zealots are named that because Rhodes believes they will serve him, and then they create their own god. They create Telionox, this high CR monster that we're going to fight with. We might even want to make a like CR18 solo monster with legendary actions and layer actions in the whole nine. All right.
I love that they Kuatoa'd. They fucking worship so hard.
Yeah, they make this manufactured divinity is really fun. And it's also great for the world of Prospect because
now you get robots good.
One, introduces robots in a very fun way, and two, it fits into the theme of the world, right? These creatures in the Forgotten Realms would need to be referencing Netheril. They would need to be referencing the old mages, and that's what they would be in sort of conversation with. In Dragonlance, right, these things would be associated with this corruption coming from, the Death Knights and things like that. The same large groups, they would be sort of associated with that. In the world of Prospect, they are a misguided attempt at creation, which is how all 90% of the problems in Prospect start. Okay, so we've got our names here, and I think we can sort of push towards what role do these three versions of this monster have in combat? What's their job, right? So obviously Telionox has something very specific. So we need to decide now, do we want a sort of dragon analog? Do we want something that a party of adventurers fights alone at the end? Or are we operating under the assumption that Telionox will be, on one of those things carried by zealots? Both are very effective to me. There's something fun about Telionox not being alone because it is this hive mind. Or at least that's how we've been sort of talking about it.
Telionox isn't going to be alone. As much as I wanted a solo monster, it doesn't make any sense.
So that means Telionox needs to be somewhere in this, like...
It's the only reason I could think it would want to be alone, it's I want to be better than the original creator. I'm not him.
Telionox is disgusted by the things that made him. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, he made these things to worship him. I'm not him. I don't need their worship. I function by myself. A hyper-individualist AI leader.
Kind of playing, I think kind of playing the same game as Rhodes there.
Yeah.
I'm not against it completely, but I'm not sure it makes this not an existential threat to the world. Right? If the votaries made the zealots and the zealots made Telionox, and Telionox doesn't give a shit about them, they're not monsters.
We're back to the start.
Yeah. The votaries and the zealots are just going to die out over a couple of generations, and then they're going to be gone. And Telionox is just going to be some weird, lonely, eldritch robot.
Yeah, Telionox can definitely summon more bots.
So, Telionox is in the very wide CR range of needing to be somewhere between CR 20 and 13. Somewhere in there. Somewhere in that zone. The votaries need to be between CR 4 and 6. And I would then place the zealots in sort of the, let's call it probably like 8 to 10, somewhere in there.
That sounds right.
And now we need
to
go ahead.
Initial thought, votaries were not built for combat. I think that's part of why they made zealots, is they want to spread the word, presumably, and they can't do that effectively. So they create zealots who can worship better and can spread the name of Rhodes. Well, no, Telionox, because they made their own god. So they are support if we're filling that slot. Then next it would be a striker, essentially, and then after that would be a controller, which is Telionox. I feel like that's the most obvious one-to-one that I can spot.
Absolutely. So with this low CR, we have this hyper utility, like a bear, right? Something that is not designed for combat, but that does very well in it, simply because
a big-ass hammer.
Yeah, it's made to be sturdy, right? These are created by the god of technology, probably as worker drones, sort of a crafting robot kind of deal. So I think that makes perfect sense, right? They have a hammer, but that hammer's not made for combat. So there's going to be some drawback there. We move on to the Zealots, which is their first creation and is the sort of fallen angel archetype, which I love. So they are combat focused. They are, something like a soldier or you said this sort of like skirmishy, very fast and dangerous creature. And then they are seeking divinity. So Telionox needs to be either a control or a support, right? He is sort of functioning in that regard. Okay, Michael, you're about to say something.
When Spencer said the first guys, the votaries, they make something to able to spread the word. The first thought I had was Rhodes made these first creatures without the ability to like speak at all. They're no mouth, nothing like that.
I have no mouth. Yeah, for sure.
Can't speak. And then the thought of they're almost silent creatures, except for the sound of like the tick 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 of their inner working.
Yeah, the clockwork. That's fun. And they create something they can speak, and then they create something that can lead.
Okay.
After speech.
I got a little thread. I don't know if I want to pull on it or not. They can't speak. They need to have sort of tapped into something. I'm wondering, like, and it wasn't Rhodes, right? Rhodes creates them. They all are clockwork, and you can hear this sort of mechanism. If enough of them are together, is there like a sound to the ticking that they started to pursue? Is there like a rhythm that's inherent in their mechanism that they start to realize that when enough of them are in the same place, they can hear? And so
that's that spark of divinity.
That's what sort of starts to pull them in that direction. What I like about that is it doesn't, because Prospect imagination creates divinity, like lower divinities, it doesn't even need to have been real, right? Pattern recognition needs to have just made them begin to believe in it, and they would have been able to sort of go in that direction.
I love that.
Okay.
I think if we're going with that too, there's some sort of pattern. I don't know what it would be. And then there's some sort of pattern for the Zealots. And then I think our Telionox is either one of two things. It's the combined pattern, or it's one of the patterns but reversed, so it's just an opposite.
My first thought was they would line up in order of their ticking, so go tick 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 down a line, and it would restart at the opposite end, so go tick 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 tick, and that feeling of needing to line up in the order of the ticking was that first sign of divinity. Then they get something they can speak where it's like, yes, this is correct.
It's also the beating of a great heart, right?
Yeah.
This rhythmic, if they start to line up in such a way that does that, I think that's very interesting.
And I think in the presence of our robot god, the ticks line up when they're with this creator god. Not the god, but the robot.
Which supports this like support control thing.
Yeah, they go click, 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 all at the same time, so they feel, imbued with that divinity properly.
Okay, good stuff. Trying to keep all my notes going here.
This is the wiki lore section. This isn't in the monster manual.
I think we
it's in
could
that
make-
big paragraph at the beginning where you introduce the
Yeah.
type of monster, and it's like, and here's how they work, and here's everything they do, and then
Yeah,
stat blocks.
progenitors. This is their shit.
Yeah. I think that we could use the ticking as some sort of abilities too.
Absolutely.
Especially with Talionox, like, because he's the controller, he can speed up the ticking to make we just go faster, have double attacks or something, or
Yeah, layer action, alignment. They all get one free opportunity attack, whatever.
yeah, there's so much we can do
Great,
with that.
a really good villain action is Talionox issues a command. All votaries can move and then attack. Is kind of the classic. Okay, so time to get into monster creation. We've got the lore. We have Spencer, 8 o'clock, right?
8 o'clock,
For
45
you?
minutes.
45 minutes? Great. No, that's perfect. So we had 10 minutes of warm-up. We're at 55 minutes total, so that gives us, so we're 45 minutes in. We're done with the lore. We have the second half to work on abilities.
Let's go.
We were talking about the votaries as being very simple, as not being as built for like tactical combat. I see sort of two roles in combat for them then. They are either low AC, high damage, right? So they're this sort of like brutish force. Applied to combat, they can't defend themselves very well, so they have to just hit hard before they are destroyed. The alternative option being high AC or HP. So when I say high A or low AC, you can bring their HP or their AC to sort of accommodate what I am describing. So I should say low defenses, high damage is the first visualization, and then the other is high defenses, low damage, right? So either they aren't built for combat in that they aren't built to destroy things, they are built to create, and so they have a lot of limitations there. Or they aren't good at combat, as in they don't have durable plating, right? They're not made to deal with damage. They are made to be effective at creating things. Two very different starting points. Do we have a preference?
I think high survivability for them makes the most sense. These things were built to last, to worship roads for as long as possible. So I'm looking at the SRD stats, and we've got Giant Shark.
Yeah.
That shit is basically what we're looking at. That's high health, fairly low AC, and one attack.
Okay.
Pretty similar.
What's the HP on that shark? Is it like
126.
Okay. Now we're getting into the real crunchy numbers. Normally I do all this stuff off stream, so I'm trying to just kind of hit it quickly and get us to the vital data. You said 126?
Yep.
What's the CR on that? 6?
5.
5? Okay.
There's also Giant Crocodile, which is similar but has multi-attack and lower HP.
It's always the trade-off they make.
Yeah.
So CR5 health range is like 131 to 145 if they have no resistances and they aren't combat focused. Right? These things resistance-wise, I mean, metallic creatures, I tend to go...
Piercing and slashing.
Yeah, I was at least going to go resistant to piercing damage. I don't think that makes a lot of sense.
If I could, I think we could resistance to piercing, but vulnerable to bludgeoning.
So that's what I was going to say. So
and then buff the HP.
I believe that anytime you give a resistance, you have to give a vulnerability. Otherwise, you've made a boring monster. So a huge gripe I have with D&D. Red dragons should be vulnerable to cold damage.
Yes.
It makes
So
sense.
obviously.
It's so obvious. It's right on the tin. It makes no sense that they aren't. So I like that idea a lot, that they are resistant to one thing, they are vulnerable to another. I would still like to pitch weak. They are weak to something, because I have...
Acid damage, they'd be weak to.
I have that. It's just a beef that I have with the whole thing. The opposite of half damage is not double damage. The opposite of half damage is 1.5 damage.
1.5.
Okay. So AC low, HP high, speed low.
Yeah, they're working with like 20 feet.
And I like that because they're sort of swarming here. Do we see any skills on these bad boys? Are they grapply? If we want these creatures to be grapple centric or something, they're going to need a lot of athletics. They're going to need a lot of, those sorts of things. If we didn't, and they are just these constructive creatures, they might just not have any skill proficiencies, right? We might just not be concerned with that.
The first thing I was thinking was to give them a variation on pack tactics. If there's another one within a certain range, they can do X, right? Take an additional attack as their ticks line up.
Okay, yeah, so in the abilities section, we have this sort of hive mind thing. I love that. If you get enough of them together, they start to be able to do something. Not sure exactly what it is. Maybe they get smarter, maybe they have more abilities. They're resistant to piercing, they're weak to bludgeoning. We like them being weak to acid. So what is another thing? So what can they totally take then? If they're weak to acid, are they resistant to fire? Are they resistant to cold? Are they resistant to... Right, I would like to trade that for something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe electricity. Maybe lightning damage doesn't really affect them too harshly.
Yeah. That would make sense.
Okay.
My only problem is I don't know if we're working with electricity as their MO because they're clockwork. We might have to hit with like heat resistant.
My point wasn't that they run on electricity. It's just that electricity wouldn't affect
it. Doesn't do anything. Makes sense. Yeah, there's no water or anything for it to fucking go through.
Also, we've latched onto the idea of ceramics, and ceramics are insulators.
Yeah.
So there's like a kind of funny joke in there.
There's something there.
There's a joke in there. All right, cool. Okay. I like that for HP. It's complicated enough. Skills-wise, it sounds like they don't have anything. It sounds like these are drones. We don't need to worry about that. Abilities, they have this hive mind thing. We need to get an idea of what their sort of actions look like before we can prescribe that. I think it'll be better to sort of do that retroactively. All right. So, at this CR, we're back in my good old-fashioned rules. I want 2 actions, a bonus action, and a reaction that these things can do. We can trade a bonus action for reaction if we think having this many little guys with reactions is a bad idea. It's important to note, at this tier, at this CR, we're talking about like 4 to 6 of them. We aren't talking about 20. Right? So you'd run into like 3 of them or 4 of them working on something. We're running into 15 of them.
I think that there's 2 obvious ones, and that is grab and hammer. They have to hold something and they have to hit it while they're constructing. It makes sense that they could do those 2 things.
The action that I'm thinking of, it's gonna sound a little bit is like conglomerate. If they have a fallen target or fallen companion near them, they can like change a piece out for themselves and heal off
you're talking like necrotic healing essentially for
basically
a robot.
Great bonus action. Or reaction in response to a creature dying. Ooh, okay.
Within a certain distance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So action, there's nothing in Dungeons and Dragons I love as much as a creature that has 2 hits. It has hit and then try to grapple. And if it grapples, big hit is something I always love. Sometimes it's fun to make that a bonus action so that it's like, oh, they can hit, and then if they grab you, they can bonus action attack. That's not what we're setting up. What we're setting up is, from your description, is grapples 1 creature. You all watch in horror as this thing reaches out a hand around his wrist, and then you see that the hand like latch the rest of the way like a manacle, and then it lifts this big hammer, and everyone's like, no,
oh,
running up. It also gives us an excuse to, so normally when a creature hits to grapple, it just works. That's also lame in my opinion. So this is obviously going to be like hit strength save.
Yep.
Right? Can you wrench your arm
break
away?
out? Yeah.
Okay, hit to grapple, strength save, love that. Big hit if already grappled. I'm about to sneeze.
Bless you.
Watermelon.
It's there.
All right. That's a nasty
So
one.
big hit.
So we've got hit. The math is just not worth it. It's going to have like +7 or something.
Yeah.
The DC will be like 15 or 14. We can bring it up if we bring the HP down. That's how that system works. There's nothing too complicated there. It hits you, it tries to grapple you, and then it does the big hit. It needs to either do a shitload of damage or have multi-attack. Right? At CR6, 2 attacks is a pretty low number, which means that big hit needs to do like 3 or 4 dice of damage if it hits, which is pretty gnarly. And that, which I like, we sort of frame these as like lumbering slow monsters. So maybe I'm imagining.
Yeah, if you get grabbed, that shit's your fault. They're slow. You don't need to get grabbed.
So I think this first hit does, maybe 2d6, maybe 2d8, maybe 1d8, and then you make a strength save. You fail the strength save, you are grappled. You are grappled by the creature. We're going to give it proficiency in athletics so that it can sort of compete in that field. That's great. And then its second attack is big hit, right?
Yeah.
Which I like.
This is like steel press or something.
Which is going to be like probably like 2 or 3 d10, like potentially very bad, potentially less bad. And I think this monster probably has 2 attacks, right? The ideal situation is hit to grapple, big hit, and then next round, big hit, next round, big hit, big, and it starts to just wail on this one person. It also gives it the opportunity to try to grab, save, try to grab, save, or try to grab, save, try to grab, fail. I need to get ungrappled by next round, or I'm going to take like 22 points of damage on average, which is heavy at this CR. Michael, what's up?
If we're naming it, Rhodes probably named it, and it's probably like Hand of Rhodes.
Yeah, the high hand of Rhodes, some shit like that.
The high hand of Rhodes is good. Okay, so now we're on to bonus action or reaction, and we need to figure out what that hive mind ability is. I'm wondering if they can assist each other as a reaction on the grapple, or they can impose disadvantage as a reaction, but I feel like that's going to make combat really messy. You're going to quickly have like action, attack, reaction, do that, grapple, action, attack, reaction, grapple. It's going to be constant noise, which is...
I would argue remove reactions. The bonus action as that necrotic heal is fun. If there's a downed ally within a certain distance, they can reach out and conglomerate some of their porcelain into themselves. They regain X D6 HP.
Okay.
It'll keep it punchier for a combat of like 4 to 6 of these dudes.
So composite.
Yeah.
Win. Okay. When a votary dies on the battlefield, another votary as a bonus action. The language on this is going to be tough, right?
It's a little bit iffy.
Another votary as a bonus action can heal blank, blank, blank using the parts that have been left behind as they merge. This can only happen once per dead creature.
Yeah.
Right? The corpse of a votary can only be conglomerated one time. We need to be something like that to make sure that we are sort of keeping track of that.
Yeah, it would either have to be can only be done once, or can only occur on the same round that it was downed. Some shit like that.
That's interesting. Okay, so either way, it ends up in the same result, which is you do it once.
The only if we want to word it a little bit different too, we could give it as a reaction to the one being downed. Reaction when creature dies, able to throw arm to, or throw leftover to.
So it would be, instead of having a bonus action, it would be action, reaction upon death.
And specifically,
and scrap.
It sounds like from what... Okay, so that's what I wasn't sure about. It sounded like Michael was describing a votary, when it sees another votary drop to 0, can like rip off some plating and throw it, take a couple of damage, and
I
heal the
see.
ally who
Oh,
falls
I
0.
wasn't thinking that, but that's cool too.
Oh, okay.
You were saying
that's-
the one going down would
Yeah.
throw part of themselves.
Themselves to an ally.
Interesting both ways. The only reason I wouldn't have it be a living one can heal a downed one is as a DM would lose track
Yeah.
of which one had used their one reaction ability to do it.
I think the bonus action heals easier. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got hit, big hit, composite, the ability hive mind. The hive mind style ability here. What are we thinking for that? Is it some kind of advantage? Is it Excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's like a paladin's aura. When they're within 15 feet of each other, they have advantage on athletics checks. So they can grapple like a son of a bitch every time they're nearby each other.
I'm down for that. I have a meaner option that we don't have to do.
Damn, all right, what is it?
Which is if a voter, it would be ability, wouldn't be like hive mind. It would be like cooperative, whatever. I don't know. We had to come up with a name for it. If one votary has somebody grappled, another votary can use its action to make that creature restrained. Can grab the other arm, basically, and move them to the next worse option, because grappled gives way to pinned / restrained, gives way to out of combat, gives way to paralyzed or whatever. We don't have to do it. It is a meaner. I was like, hey, do you want to do this more mean option than that?
I'm not against it.
Let me peek
because they are slow.
Let me peek at the text of restrained.
It would make sense for them to leap on the opportunity to bring a creature down faster.
It also
from
gives
grappled.
It gives you the fun of like a creature gets grappled, and all of a sudden you watch all of them like switch their attention to the one that's been grappled. So, restrained, a creature's speed becomes 0. Attack rolls against it have advantage. It has disadvantage. It has disadvantage on dexterity saves. So pretty gnarly. Grappled is taking so long to load.
Yeah, it's fair. Happens every time I pull it up.
I imagine it's just going to be 0 movement. The movement is reduced to 0. The creature, a grappled creature speed becomes 0.
That's
So
it?
yeah,
That's it.
Okay.
makes sense. So I think that moving up one notch with another one grabbing on makes perfect sense. I think that's fun. That's a fun pack ability. The abilities assembly line.
Yeah, something like that's really good. I wonder if they can do it. It probably takes an action, right? There's a very mean version of this ability, which is if you are grappled and another votary is within 5 feet of you, you are restrained and stay. You are restrained and stay as it reaches out and takes you. That would make this. We would have to nuke the HP. If we give it that ability, that HP's got to go down to like 80 from the 130 that it's supposed to be. Okay, I think we got a pretty good layout for the votary.
Pretty good. All right, time for the zealot.
Time for the zealot. Okay. We have already built in an absolute chef's kiss link between these two, which is it makes perfect sense that the votary made a very fast skirmisher to support them.
We got a monk. We're
thing's
fighting monks.
Incredibly quick and can take advantage of that grappled or restrained by like darting in and out of that fight really, really quickly, which I think is going to be very exciting for us. So number one, we've got this 8 to 10 CR range.
Sorry, I got to tell you, my first instinct is that it's got those extra joints like horses do. And that's why I can just... All of them have that same disgusting porcelain mask, though. Ugh.
I have a little piece of absolutely dark and cursed knowledge for you and the viewers at home now and in the future. Horses don't have legs. Biologically speaking, horses run on 4 fingers.
Disgusting.
And the hoofs at the end are their toenails.
Don't need to know that.
There's your terrible truth of the day because of the way they run. And if you look at a finger, it's like that. It's a digit. It's not an arm with a different bend on it, the way that a leg is. You're welcome.
So anyway, guys, that's the end of the stream. I need to go.
So it's just like we're actually going to commit
your
ritual
nightmare.
suicide now, which is weird. I think the Zealot has high AC, low HP, high speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or moderate
High
AC,
damage or
maybe.
low damage?
High damage. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
a punch. This is a punch man of some sort.
We're talking Dex AC, so it's like 15.
Yeah, high dex, not high armor, which is like
Yeah.
22 and
Yeah.
repulsive to deal with. So we've got AC neutral to high, we've got HP low, we've got speed high. Love all that. Next up, we've got this sort of skills and abilities bracket. This is where we got Hive Mind and where we got giving them athletics as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any ideas in that field this early in the creation of the Zealot, or are we not sort of working with anything just yet?
In a similar category, I think giving it some of the mobile feat is interesting. After making an attack, it can leave range without provoking opportunity attacks.
Okay. All right, I like it. So it's got main hit, no reaction. Light work, no reaction.
Light work, no reaction. Yeah, it's a vital strike or something, right? This thing's built to defeat flesh and blood people. So it does like a neck strike and can leave.
If we're really leaning into fighting these things in units, then I think its actions should be hit. It should have this hit no reaction where it can like run in, attack somebody, dash back out, and keep maneuvering around. I think it probably gets 2 or 3 of those. I think it's got multi-attack up pretty high. And I think it should have a big punch in the way that the votary does. I think that it should have a, like, if the target is grappled or restrained, it can use blank. It can use, you know, coup de grace or whatever
guillotine.
it is.
Yeah.
Which is basically just sneak attack, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. It walks up and it fucking breaks your arm that's grabbed by this robot.
Yeah, huge point.
It just hits you hard.
We keep talking about the monk. Does this thing have a sword? Does the thing have claws? Does this thing have fists? It was made for combat.
It would have a weapon, right? These other things are working with hammers or fists that are shaped like hammers. This probably has blades.
I think it would be very good. I think they should get less humanoid, not more. I don't think that Teleonox is made in the image of a man. I think Teleonox is made in the image of a robot, right? They aren't going to lean into the mortal characteristics. So I think a Zealot looks less like a person.
It's got blade feet and hands and shit. It still has the mask, but everything else kind of falls apart.
I'm weirdly with this, I'm thinking of you know, like prosthetics, like the bent back paper clip style, that like S leg that swings down.
Oh yeah, the
deal.
like
the
speed stilts. I see.
But so we've got that hit no reaction. We've got this heavier hit. We like that they have a weapon of some kind, and have a sort of less human form, which I think is kind of interesting. So now I'm looking for kind of a bonus action reaction for this skirmisher. I don't think they can bonus action hide necessarily. Bonus action dash is incredibly mean, but could work.
A creature with 40 feet getting bonus action dash, being able to move 80 feet and strike anything is pretty fun. It's got to make up for the weakness of the slow bot, so it would be attacking the back line whenever possible. It makes sense.
So, interesting. Okay. So if that's our goal, there's an ability that I really like that I've given a couple of our monsters, which is As a reaction to being hit by a ranged attack, the creature moves up to its speed and then attacks.
That's pretty fun.
So if somebody hits it with an arrow or a fireball, it can
Just-
it can, as a reaction, take its full movement and attack at the end of the movement.
Yeah.
We
I
don't
like
need to
that.
do that. It's just one of my favorite abilities to give a monster because it's a really good, like, oh no! Like, it's a really good
Yeah.
instant, no!
Oh shit.
Do we want any actions? Because they were created to spread the word too with some sort of vocal action or.
Oh, it's got command or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Song. I love this. Like, Song of the Cogs or Sound of the Machine is great.
Yeah.
Probably a bonus action then, right?
That makes
Something
sense.
that can, like, what does that bonus action do? Does it have a recharge? What's that bonus action up to?
Mm.
It's got this song. We've got this kind of compel duel thing going on that I think is very fun. We've got hit, no reaction right now. The creature it hits doesn't have a reaction. We could do bonus action, Song of the Machine. Every creature in the area makes a wisdom save. On a failed, they lose their reaction for that round.
So it can just blast past. That's pretty fun.
That's more of an aura than a bonus action, though. If it doesn't have to trigger
Yeah.
it.
No,
Any
I think
thoughts
it
on
should. It should cost something to have that go off.
So let's do bonus action. Let's do recharge, because I think 1 to 3
Yeah.
times a day doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's do that classic recharge 5/6.
5 sticks. Yep.
Song of the Machine. Wisdom save, no reactions. Which is great because it kills reactions in like a 60-foot area. Like any
Yeah.
creature within.
Mhm.
So within a 30-foot radius sphere, right? You lose your reaction, which also tells me you're only ever going to be fighting like 2 of these,
Mm-hmm.
right? That ability,
Yeah,
having that range,
yeah.
means we have to be kind of careful with that.
And I think it does follow the line in the lore where it's like there are 1,000 votaries, there are 100
Zealots.
zealots, and then there's one
Telling
of
you.
our final boss. Yeah, Telenax.
And then reaction, I think that we know that they made the zealots so that the zealots could make Teleonox. So I do think they're kind of a skirmisher. They're running in and out of combat. I would like for their reaction to sort of interact. I want them to do something where they interact with a votary.
Mm-hmm.
We have that a little bit in this heavier hit. If a creature is grappled or restrained, you can do an attack that hits harder. I think that's great. We can even be so specific as if a creature is grappled by a votary, but we could also sort of work other ways. What kind of
I think-
reaction could this bad boy have?
It could be. It almost seems like it's a protector of these votaries. So reaction when damaged, it does something. It could be. Oh, what's it doesn't quite work. I was thinking I can't remember what it's called, but the shield, like if it's to take damage, it would take it instead.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But
I
it
think I
doesn't
actually
quite fit.
I weirdly like that better for the votary.
Yeah.
As a reaction. I do want to say I actually think I want to go back to my distance counter to use some Fire Emblem parlance here. What if it has this blade? Just a thought. As a reaction to being hit with a ranged attack, it can like attack at distance, but it needs to go get the blade.
It loses its weapon after throwing
It's
it.
another thing for DM to keep track of, so that's not my favorite, but I like the idea that it can do it, but then needs to go get it. I don't know. What are we thinking? It's funny. It's a good homebrew thing, because I would keep track of it.
But published, it'd be like, well.
Publishing-wise, I think it's a little tough.
No, I think that it should be reaction to taking range damage. It throws the blade. It is attached to a chain and retracts. I don't think we should make him keep track.
Okay.
But reaction for the votaries having shield is pretty fun. Human shield, I guess. Body shield. Take damage for an ally. I like that.
I like that too. Shield. I wonder if I like the idea that they have the reaction, but they can only use that reaction if a Zealot or Teleonox are hit. Because I don't want them to be able to do it to each other, or it's just going to slow combat to an absolute crawl.
Yeah.
I like it better as, trying to have that sort of like, and we can give it a name that sort of feeds into that, right? Divine Sacrifice. Yeah. You take the full damage of the attack that would hit the other thing. Anything like that, they tend to say like, oh, it parries, it halves the damage. I always think it's better to have it absorb some of the damage because it self-solves the problem. It takes out minions as you are sort of continuing in the fight, which is always great.
That's fun.
Okay. I like that working on the Zealot has expanded the votary. That's great. So that's the Zealot, right? So the Zealot is this very quick moving, slightly higher AC, low HP, more fragile, which I think is kind of great, that is less humanoid. And it's dashing around with these, like, I'm imagining, like, it might look kind of spidery, maybe, right? It's a little less humanoid looking. It can emit this song. So all of a sudden, when it enters combat, it can force all the votaries, and suddenly those clicks fall into synchronicity and create this terrible noise in this 30-foot radius sphere. I like that. I think that's good. I like that it can only do it for a little bit in a way that Teleonox will be able to do it for long periods of time. We'll be able to like pull that into unity, I think is great. And then the reaction distance counter is just good for a skirmisher, right? It gives them a really fun way to engage with the mage. They need to suddenly be very careful about what they're doing, when are they attacking, and worry about distance. If this thing has 40 feet of movement, you can attack it as much as you want from 50 feet away. It'll run and then be standing there. Or, like you said, this sort of blade with a chain having like a 60-foot reach is fun in a similar way, right? Where all of a sudden everybody needs to be like trying to figure out like, wait, how close am I exactly after the first time it happens? Okay, pretty good.
We got one more, and we have 13 minutes.
Which is pretty good for us schedule-wise. Now, Teleonox, pretty big hitter here. We've got our AC to worry about. We've got our HP and speed to worry about.
First thought with the look. We've had the porcelain mask on each of them. Do you want like a half cracked mask, porcelain mask for him? Or fully gone, or fully there still?
I think
it's hard. Yeah.
I think it might not have the porcelain mask anymore. Or if it does, it's got to be it has to be wrong in some way, right? We're pulling more distant from humanity. Can I be honest with you? I'm imagining, you guys remember all those creepy Garfield comics? Where people drew like giant demonic Garfields?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, John. That's where my mind's going. Like, it's going to these like eldritch scale creature. I don't know if that's wrong. It's where my head went right away, was to these like...
Yeah, my first thought was that it has just like a dozen masks. 100 masks. You don't really know what's looking at you and what isn't from this form.
It's funny. The fully away from humans, it's literally a giant computer that they all just carry around. It has zero movement.
I know, that's such a fun idea. I don't know if it would work in combat, but it is fun to imagine them with like a palisade or whatever it's called, like having to carry this thing. I don't know, another idea I like, Spencer, you went in this direction that I think is really good. You said it's covered in masks. It's got me wondering if these things want to be buried, right? One of the great signs that somebody has stumbled onto religion is that they want to be buried. What if they are buried by being returned to Teleonox? And so they are these sick, like amalgams, which also makes me then wonder, the next bold decision then is, after the combat, is there a chance that the party kills a bunch of zealots and goes to sleep, and one of them
They're
on their,
all gone.
one of them on their watch sees one of two scenes, and I think this is up to us. Scene one, you're on your watch. Somebody rolls a really high perception. You watch one of the arms of the votary like slowly dragging itself away.
Mhm.
They're defeated. They're dead. They're not a threat in combat anymore, but they move. Or, and I think this might be creepier, they go to sleep right by where they fought them. They wake up. They roll a success on their perception check, and they see a couple of votaries with like bags scooping up parts.
Yeah.
Like trying to stealth and ignoring them, not starting the combat again. Like medics coming on to collect these items and like walk off with them might be kind of fun, right? The want to be buried and to return to this creature, I think, is pretty good.
That's pretty sick.
Hmm.
Pretty sick. Yeah. And after, it's like the mask that you cracked with your dagger, you see on Telionox's arm. Oh.
And we can give the zealots can probably talk. The zealots,
yeah.
Zealots are talking, interacting, hiring mercenaries. They are fully aware, adroit, adept creatures that are interacting with the world around them. Okay. So stylistically, yes, very
solid.
This sort of mask amalgam is great. We're doing okay on time. I gotta say, it's high AC, high HP, for sure. Is this a low speed creature because of its scale? Right? Is this a huge creature that can't move very fast?
I think so.
Does it fly?
Yeah.
Does it tunnel? Does it stuck on the ground like normal?
I'm straight up picturing this now with the 1,000 masks. Just also, it's got 2,000 arms, a bunch of scrap making up the body. I do think that this thing is slow, but it's massive. It's like fighting one of those huge basilisks, right? Like it's just there. It takes up 10 square space or something. It doesn't matter if it's slow, if it's huge.
Okay, so slower then. Large on scale. I like the idea that it has this part of it that will be the sort of divinity, and then there is this sloping mass of other parts. You can still see the being that they visualize it like. The fact that they are literally beneath it, building up like a foundation, is great. The AC and HP thing, I think, all makes sense to me. So, abilities, actions, bonus actions, reactions, and I think we at least need some villain actions or layer actions. So either of those I think are good. I can tell you right now, bonus action. Bonus action spawn. 5 to 6 recharge. What is it? 1d4? 2d4 votaries? 2d4 votaries is too many. 1d4 votary appear. And that is a bonus action. So it's like, it can't do it every round. It's got to roll. But this fight could quickly sort of get out of hand. As it is reviving, you watch like a couple of the different ones on its body group together and land on the ground and start like running out to join the fray.
I'm going to argue 1d4 plus 1 votaries. There should never just be one votary spawned.
You're talking about adding like 10 CR to the fight. But we're also talking about maybe adding 20 if it rolls a 4. Yeah, we got a nuke. That's got to be 1d2 or something, right? Or is it 1? It could be 1. Hello, thank you for the subscription, Satarkaz42. That noise was a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. All right. I think 1d4 plus 1 is going to TPK a party.
I'd be cool with a 1d2 plus 1.
I think we need to visualize the setup.
Bonus action resurrect a votary that has died.
Just one?
In replacement.
Yeah.
I think
that's
it's
fun.
Bonus action resurrect it with 1 HP, and it's every round. There's no recharge.
Okay.
Interesting. And then
it goes right back down, but it doesn't matter because next round it's gonna just raise another one.
Yeah, that's fun. Just enough to slow down a front line from getting up in the business.
Because the problem is, and it's good that we just said it out loud. We just can't. You can't add 10 CR to a fight.
Yeah,
you can't.
Oh, layer action would be regenerate. It has brought up these 3. You haven't dealt with them. Layer action. They regain 3d6 HP, 5d6, 4d10, whatever.
Is that every single votary and
I think
zealot?
so.
Yeah, it's all of the progeny.
And 3D,
so you want to kill them.
And 3d6 is like one more hit at this level,
Yeah.
right? Because at this point, your fighter, right, who has a long sword and a shield, is doing 1d8 plus strength. At this level, if they're at 15, their strength score is an 18 or a 20. So you're talking about 1d8 plus 5. So you're talking about, on the low end, an average of 9 to 10 damage. So 3d6...
with one attack.
Yeah, 3d6 is going to, on average, bring 3.57, 11. So you're adding one hit.
Yep.
That's a bad hit to add to a bunch of them that have 1 HP. All of a sudden, they are 2 hits to bring down instead of 1. That's a huge jump in the nature of the combat. This is, again, guys... You could just play Monster of the Week. No, yeah. If you're new and this is very intimidating, don't worry about it. It comes with time. You'll start to sort of understand it the more as you go. It's basically just make sure you understand how much damage a character is doing around and how much health everybody's working with. That's going to be the real center. And so that's what we're doing with this. So we've got the heal ability. We've got that bonus action raise. I think that's great. I don't think we need another bonus action. That's good enough that I don't think Telenox is ever going to do anything else. Telenox is going to constantly be raising minions. My only question is, does that only work on votaries? Does that work on zealots?
The raise?
Yeah.
I think it works in anybody.
Okay, that's nasty. Love it, though. Okay. That's a good bonus action. We've got that great sort of layer action being that regenerate. I'd like at least one other layer action, something gnarly, but we can sort of work on that in a minute. Action. Everybody's got one action, and that action is hit. The action is hit them. Is hit them with something.
Do we want to play with the idea of this thing having divine power?
Yeah, it has to.
So this, I think, would be a good spot to have a ranged attack and a simple up-close attack. Ranged attack would be something like, a flaming divine strike from nowhere. It just goes and immolates somebody.
So we've got this ranged hit that hits hard. And then I think we have a yikes level melee hit. This is a big...
It's like crush.
It's a big, slow creature. You don't want to get near. It's like getting bit by the Tarrasque, right? If you get close enough to the Tarrasque, you risk getting swallowed. You risk everything breaking bad. So you have to sort of keep some distance. I like that. We got this ranged hit. I think this bad boy gets a third action. I think it needs a spell. Not a spell from the list. It needs to, channel the mechanism, channel the heart of the machine. It can do something large. It's not a DPS. This is a controller. So I think that's really important for us to remember here. So I think that ranged hit is probably just a ranged hit. That melee hit, we need to figure out what makes those controller flavored. Like what is happening to make those not just about outputting damage, but instead about hampering the party's efforts.
Yeah. The third action you're talking about, is this where we read the big controller one where it's the changing the ticking speed of the porcelains?
I think that's a good layer action.
Layer action? Okay.
I think a good layer action is either regen some health or +1 action. Having to choose between those two, I think, is kind of fun. +1 action's a little heavy. It could be +3 to hit for the next round, maybe, something like that.
I think for the Divine Smite, we don't have a name for it yet. Well, let's call it Divine Immolation. For Divine Immolation, I think sacrificing some damage to give the potential for blinding is pretty interesting. You throw that at a caster in the back, it doesn't have sight, it can't rely on any spells that do use sight, which is basically all of them. So pretty solid control action there.
Okay. So it's this like dazzling, or maybe because but we've been playing mostly with sound and not with light, right? A voice of the machine. Everybody must make a save or be deafened. Doesn't really.
Deafened doesn't do it. Every time it's like blindness, deafness, nobody's ripping out of deafness.
No. It could be frightened condition.
It could be you can't speak. It could be silenced.
Ooh.
That's gnarly.
Yeah. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, I call it like the higher word or.
That's good. Silence DC. We'll put that bad boy on a recharge.
Yeah. Breath weapon.
That's
the crush attack. Do you want it to make more controller instant restraint? Because we've described it as 1,000 arms. You're instantly.
You take a huge amount of damage. You are restrained if you don't pass a certain DC strength save, and then you take continuous damage inside the form of.
It tries to pull you in
goes
to this massive like pseudo divine form. Okay, melee yikes. I'll add a little grab on there. God, we love our grapples, but it's important at these high levels. You got to take out some attacks and stuff. Got that ranged hit, which is normal. I like that. We've got this melee attack that's really dangerous, right? It encourages the fighter and the barbarian to not just stand up there and just sort of stand and bang and get murdered. We've got this spellcaster solution and this powerful action. We've got these two villain actions. That's all great. We have -1 minute. We have a reaction left. I think the reaction is give a divine smite to an attack that happens within range.
That's pretty fun.
It
hasn't made paladins, but it empowering.
Watch a divine smite be given within range.
Yeah. Pretty sick.
That's scary.
Dealing with a battlefield of 12 robots, they're all on different people. One of them raises the blade, it glows green, and slams down. You're like, what the fuck was that?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. With that reaction, we've got 3 actions, a bonus action, a reaction, and 2 layer actions. That feels good to me.
Tied up with a bow.
Along with all of these, we have so many. And what I love is the Zealot's attack. The Zealot's heavy hit requires it be restrained, not restrained by the Zealot or the Votary. So we're sort of playing off of everything in a way here that I think is really good. It also encourages them to break the grapples on each other, stay aware of one another, and taps into this robot fear of this like grappling, grabbing, being overtaken thing that I get with zombies. I get it with robots. You know, it's the scarabs in the Mummy. You know, it's this fear of
lost to the tide.
Yeah, being overwhelmed by this thing. I think is really good. All right, with that, it's 8:03. That was a pretty strong one. I think we really clocked in on there. I think that I feel really good about this. We've got these 3 monsters that could take up an arc, right? We were playing in tier 3 here. Teleonox has just seen fit to attempt to attack the world, to make itself known. Rhodes would probably be the one to be like, hey guys, I fucked up really bad. I'll give you 1,000 gold. Don't tell anyone, please. Yeah, that's really good.
We basically built an adventure on this one.
Yeah, this is really good. I like, and we started with just a couple of prompts. We picked a level range, figured out what CR fits that, and then just sort of rolled forward as we continued. I think I feel really good about this. Definitely coming to you soon, either as an adventure or a product. Some kind of like wanted poster. This has got that written on it in 10-foot tall letters. With that, Spencer, I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Shout out to new subscribers, people who like the channel. Please feel free to follow us on TikTok, where we post memes and advice, etc. On YouTube, you can subscribe. Besides that, we've recently published our first and most recent adventure called The Lich's Dollhouse. It's on DriveThruRPG and itch.io. You can find it there. It costs $3. Cough up the change, and you get a fun little built-in level 1 adventure that you can run with your friends. So, follow us on all of our socials. Check this stream. It's every Tuesday at 6:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. And Thursday, we have an actual play D&D Theros live stream called The Party Makes Things Worse. They do. And that's every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check out our streams. Follow